Have you ever noticed what drives you? What motivates you to go further, faster,
Are we on now?
longer? Yes.
I,
1 second. See, this is wonderful. So what drives you, we're not always certain about. And today I have a very special guest who will talk to us about that. And I think you just saw the prime example of a driven man. My name is Valerie. I can't stop laughing. Let me take a moment. My name is Valerie Hope. I'm your host, and you are now at Time to Come Alive. This is a weekly conversation that hopefully will bring you to become more conscious, more connected, and as a result, more creative in different areas and experiences in your life. And as I've said, every week I have different guests. In just a moment, I will introduce this week's guest to you all. But before I forget, I want to make sure that if you have not already subscribed to www.timetocomealive.com, please do so that you can get notified every single time a new episode is posted. You can go to www.timetocomealive.com, or you might subscribe to the YouTube channel. And that way you'll know exactly when the newest episodes have aired. Now, without further ado, just wanted to share this special driven person that I have on my podcast today. Thierry, you and I decided we met, we want to say back in 2015 or so, probably-ish. And you were the general manager at the time at the Hyatt Regency, Mexico City. And one thing that you've been so consistent, Thierry, in the times that we've interacted and in the years that I've known you, is how focused you are and intense you are in so many areas of life, not just in your business life, but I also notice in your personal life, in your nutrition, in your family life. There's so many areas of life that you bring a presence of mind and clarity and focus. And I just appreciate that so much about you. Is such a you have such a commitment to that in all the different areas. And I think as a result have inspired very many people because of your way of being. So first of all, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Welcome.
it's a pleasure, Valerie. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And I just love that. You're like, are we on now?
Let's go. Let's move on.
Yes. So those of you who do not know Thierry, it's actually quite typical for you to just go, let's make this happen now. What are we waiting for? What is all the preamble? Let's cut to the chase. So I so appreciate that moment, because I think it does demonstrate quite literally how driven you are. So first of all, what else should we know about you, Thierry?
Well, I'm a French national. I was born in near Paris, on closer to the Château de Versailles, for those who know. And I was raised there, and I did my studies in France near Paris. And I started my career working at Hyatt about like 27 years ago in the first Paris Hyatt Hotel at the Charles de Gaulle Airport. And I'm very happy to be with you and share ideas and thoughts and perspective. I love it. We had already very interesting conversations together, and I'm very glad to have this opportunity today to continue.
Well, I'm honored that you said yes to being a guest on the show, and that means I can ask you anything I want. You don't have to answer.
I can answer anything I want to. No?
That is so true. That is very true. So first of all, one of the things that I feel important to note about you is you've now been, so I met you back in 2015 or so as the general manager for the Hyatt Regency Mexico City, but you've just gotten promoted recently. So tell us about the promotion that you received.
Well, yeah, thank you. I've moved nearly a year ago from Mexico to a regional role at the office in Miami, covering the Caribbean and South America, including Mexico. And 2 months ago, I was promoted senior vice president and succeeding a very famous and a legend in our region, on Margot T, was still helping me in the transition. And it's an honor and a lot of responsibility to continue developing the region, and also working with such a great team of leaders we have in our region. So I feel blessed, honored, and a lot of responsibility.
I can imagine. First of all, congratulations.
Thank
Right,
you.
it is a big responsibility, especially in light of the huge changes that have swept the
Yeah.
hospitality industry. So just out of curiosity, you were in, we're smack dab in the middle of a pandemic when you said yes to this new job. Why did you say yes?
Well, because it will end, not the job, but the pandemic, and the job eventually a day, right? But no, I think it's I think it's a good way to say things move on.
Mm,
This will not last, and we will be able to continue our growth and continue our development and continue to impact the lives of our colleagues, of our people, and obviously developing more businesses and getting more opportunity to have our dear guests and customers, being and going through the properties we have in the region. So I think it's good to have, especially in that current moment of difficulties and exceptional moment, to have a bit of perspective of after. This is how we can put ourselves in a bit more of a perspective and keep growing, rather than maybe getting more centered on ourselves.
So for you, this was not only an opportunity personally, right, for you and your family to continue to move forward, but also it sounds like it also is indicative for the rest of either the hotels that you support, right, or the people in the organization who are looking to what's happening next, is also an opportunity to show growth and movement.
Exactly.
That's interesting. When you think about this, because I kind of also heard in what you shared, this optimism, this hope that you have for the future, right? The pandemic will end, things will need to continue to grow and move. Where does that come from?
I don't know. I think it's I've always been very, very positive, and sometimes maybe too positive, but I don't think it's a problem. I think it's quality, and maybe at times I need to get surrounded by people a bit counterbalancing my positiveness and try to put their perspective in my perspective, so that we're more balanced. And I think it's important, and we'll certainly get back to that element of balance in the team and recruitment. And there's a lot of elements in that. But I don't know. Maybe it's my karma is positive. My personality is positive, and I've always been trying to do the best of things I had without necessarily being criticizing what I didn't have. Like, and I think it helped me a lot in my life, because it's you get a way to see things much more positively, a bit more in a good way and perspective. And I think it's so important for your mind and your body being the result of your mindset, somehow there's obviously a link. And getting positive is certainly helping to have a better perspective on how to move forward.
When you think about this, first of all, that you love your positivity, right? You like being positive, and you recognize that sometimes you need a counterbalance. At what point in time do you recall noticing that you were, quote unquote, too positive?
No, I think sometimes I see things, on in a perspective where things will get better because we do things, not because by themselves, but because we are, making this and that. And sometimes you realize that maybe you don't have the time or the resource to make things better, especially in a work environment where time is a constraint. So you need some people telling you, well, maybe you need to rebalance, and you don't have the time to do that. Even though if you had the time, maybe you would succeed in reversing a situation, but you don't have the time and maybe not the money. So it helps also to get your perspective a bit changed. But I think overall, especially when you have a leading position or you work with a team, positivism is crucial. It's crucial for the energy, for the team. And no one wants to be led or surrounded by somebody being negative, saying dark things, and staying on the same pattern at every moment. So on the other hand, getting that positivity, that perspective is what drives people to be better. That's why I'm bouncing back to this purpose that Hyatt has developed for some years now, and I think it's 2013 that really helped to provide that North Star, that guidance to what are we doing? Are we feeding guests? Are we providing beds? Yes, we do, but it's not why we do that. We want them to be their best, or we want to help or contribute to be the best. So it's somehow, for me, a call of action. And when you have that perspective, it helps also to organize the things you want to achieve and the things you want to touch. Because it's obviously much broader. It's deeper, and it helps you also to be to have with people a different approach, because you are forced, if you follow that purpose, to follow maybe what they want rather than what you want them to be, especially in a work environment. Family too, I have two sons. I got a dear wife, and sometimes my energy is making them do things that maybe they wouldn't want to do, but it's good to have people talking to you and listen and balance.
Well, since you're the only person on the podcast, your wife and your kids are not here to counterbalance per se.
Well, I'm sure they put comments.
And it's interesting what you said earlier, because right now there's so much that people can't manage and control in some ways. And what you're pointing to is that there are things that you can control, right? There are things that you can continue to achieve in spite of the circumstances or in spite of the environment. When you're as a leader and you have other people who are saying, we can't meet these particular goals, we can't do these things, even some of your guests limited by the circumstances, how do you share your positive outlook with them?
Well, it's difficult because everybody has, a different experience. And I think we have to respect that, some may be feeling fear, feeling anxious. Some have had direct contact with the consequences of the virus. So we have to respect and understand that. But like anything, bad, things will improve. So again, it's about giving perspective on things. It's giving, and we all recall, the best memories we have is sometime when it was the harder at the time. The hardest at the time, and once it has passed, when the emotion has passed, you recall as finally it was good. I learned, I strived, I progressed, and so on. So it is. I'm like any human. It's complicated. It's long. You cannot see, necessarily people as you would like them you would like to meet them. It's hard to make, contacts, and especially for us. I mean, we arrived in Miami right when the pandemic started. So, like, it's how do you make friends? It's not the best moment, because obviously we need to respect, the social distancing and all these protocols. So it's we need to give hope. We need to have hope, and that's the only way we can come out anyway. So why would one believe differently?
Oh, it's easy to
That's
say, why would one believe differently, but I'm sure there's people here that could list a bunch of
I
reasons
know.
now. But to your point, my last name is Hope, so I do feel like I have a responsibility to keep it alive, keep hope alive
Exactly.
somehow. Yeah, I get that. But Thierry, tell me this: so when you're talking to someone literally who is not fulfilling, and I'm not just talking about the business world. Obviously, I know there's a bunch of GMs probably listening to this at some point. They're like, okay, now I know what I should and shouldn't say to Thierry. That's not what I'm getting at. But you've gone through some difficult times in your life aside from the pandemic, right? So let's talk a little bit about how your challenges, right, when you've passed through, like you said, the darkest moments and gotten through the emotion of those moments, you now saw that there was a way forward. Let's talk a little bit about those experiences. What would you say are some of the experiences that you've had to go beyond that dark moment or beyond that dark emotion?
Yeah. As a young man of 35, I think I was 36 years old, I was diagnosed with a cancer, testicular cancer. So usually it's for, young men. And it's interesting. I mean, I think it was now I can say, but an incredible experience. An experience of life, an experience of, why me? And you could say, well, I don't know, I'm healthy, and I do not smoke, I don't drink too much, I exercise, and boom, you get hit, and you encounter a world which is so different than what you're used to see, or to be into contacts, because you get into the world of hospitals, sick people, treatments, and so on. The other interesting thing I had at the very first moment of that, after I went to surgery, uh, no one was really putting a name on what I had, which is a cancer, because the weight of the word is heavy. I don't know in the US culture and the English language, but in France, like, when you have cancer, it's like, my God, you're half dead, And and it's interesting because I could see that in the eyes of my friends, and they, not because they saw me dead, but they were the word of the disease was resonating so badly and negatively that they were seeing me like, my God, maybe it's the last time I see him. So it was like, wow. But and you feel it. You don't pretend to let them know that you feel they see you differently, but you see it. It's okay. I mean, it's because people are not necessarily very at ease with the disease. So, they get the treatment, you get very sick. I mean, I got very sick because at the time it has evolved a bit, but at the time, cancer treatment is killing for restoring. So you really have a strong and very efficient treatment, but that nearly puts you to the ground. So yes, it's a difficult moment. But I recall as I was doing my chemotherapy,
Chemo.
chemo, that I was going 4 days in a row, and then I was going back to the house. One day, one of these helpers for sick people. They go and they visit hospital and they talk and so on. And that lady, entered the room. I was like, okay, doing my stuff. And she stayed 5 minutes. She looked at me and she said, I know you will go through that. I can see it in your eyes. So I was like, wow, thank you. And I was very positive. I was not seeing any other outcome anyway, because you fight for your wife, you fight for your kids. I mean, my kids were like 4, 5 years old, 6 years old, and you don't have any other choice. You need to pass that moment. I cannot, die and let my wife and my 2 kids. So for me, it was like a no-brainer. I had to go through that, whatever it takes. So, but that woman, who has seen so many patients, I mean, it was like, I was, and also you get close to a reality of a lot of people have cancer, follow treatments and so on. And I recall I was doing a chemo one day, and I was seated next to a woman, and we obviously the chemo chat because you get an hour, an hour and a half, like. And you talk to her. She said, "Well, I had a breast cancer, and when I told my husband, the first thing he did is quit me." And
He left her?
yeah, the moment she said, "I have a cancer," so you have dramatic situations, and we got lucky because obviously we got treatment and good hospitals, but it can be very cruel.
Wow.
But the experience, as I call it, is incredible because you get to see a reality that you don't see when you're not close to that disease. And the mission you have afterwards is talk about it, say you have a life. And one of the things I did after I cured, I had a year to put my physical back into shape, was to run a marathon.
Wait. You put your body back into shape by running a marathon? You were running before.
I was running, but I was planning to do my first marathon in the year after the treatment and the recovery. So I said, okay, I'll take a year to get back on shape. And I did my first marathon. It was in 2010, and no, 2008, sorry. And I ran for a charity for kids with cancer. So it was also very emotional. You were running with the name of a kid on your chest, taking the picture. I mean, it's a whole symbolic race I was doing, and very happy. And it was very emotional, the arrival and wow. But what I wanted to say is that every time I finished a marathon, because then I did once every year, I was sending my picture and my comments to my doctor so that he could share that with his patients and saying, so I did this for about 10 years or 12 years, but and he was thankful. Was I could share that with my young man going through the same disease as you did, and it's always helping. So yeah, that's an interesting moment.
That is. It's interesting to think about. First of all, not everybody in the same circumstance has that clarity of purpose. And it sounds like, obviously your family was a big part of that. Your own innate need and driven nature, I think, also contributed hugely. But it's interesting to hear that you also wanted to share that with others and the way in which you did that.
Yeah.
What continues to drive you? So it sounds, it's been 10 plus years now since that diagnosis. So what keeps the spark lit?
Well, I don't know where is my drive coming from. Certainly, it has been a positive element of my curing the cancer I had, because we always say 50% is the drug, 50% is the mind. And the only problem, we don't know which one is which. So you have to do both 100%. But I don't know. I mean, I think maybe it's my personality, it's the way I was born, or maybe it's my mission on earth for this journey. I know it can be tiring, and it can be tiring for the people I lead, and I've heard that as positive feedback and constructive feedback, and say you're so driven. Say, okay, I'm trying, I'm trying to calm, and also my family, they see me, for even much more of a long time now. So, but yeah, that's I think there's more positive anyway, and I think it helps people to also grow themselves and go beyond the limit, and try to achieve things you wouldn't think would be achievable. And if when you do this as a team, it's even a greater feeling of satisfaction.
That's interesting about how this idea of achievement, or at least driving with not only purpose, but it sounds like in service to others.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It sounds like your drive is in service to others and not necessarily to fulfill. I mean, there might be some things that are fulfilled within you, but it sounds like that's not the primary. That's not the priority. That's the primary ingredient of your inspiration. Before the cancer diagnosis, let's go back even further. What were you like as a kid? Like, do you have siblings? And, how did you grow up, and how did this drive show up when you were young?
I was a Boy Scout for about 10 years.
Boy Scout?
Boy Scout.
Uh-huh.
And I've been, I was so fun. I mean,
you were fun?
oh
What
yeah.
happened?
No, you spend nearly all your weekends outside,
Mm-hmm.
And you camp and you do things that now is not allowed anymore, because we've gotten more of a protective society overall.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time was so fun, and a lot of things, and you could spend time in nature and doing things like you wouldn't do if you were not doing that anyway. So yeah, I loved it. So it's really this contact with nature and community of Boy Scouts was a fantastic experience. I did a lot of sport. I always I've done sport. Some I did for a month and then I quit because it didn't please me, like soccer. Some I did for long, like judo. I did Tai Chi. I did Kung Fu. I did Taekwondo. Plenty of gym. I mean, plenty of sport, running, rugby. I quickly realized that for rugby, I was not made for that. A bit skinny for those who don't know me, but yeah.
You need a little bit more bulk. What was your criteria for choosing which sport you stuck with and which one you discarded?
I don't know. There was no criteria. It was like trying. And I think my mom at the time, and more my mom than my father, but was letting me try. Okay, you want to do that? You don't want to do that? Fine. Not pushing you. Or she was not trying to achieve any goal. She was okay. It's good to try. If you like it, do it. If you don't, so. Which is, sometimes in education we want, our kids or our team to be somebody that maybe not want to be. So, which is obviously a mistake and a recipe for failure.
Talk to us about that. You mentioned to me before about how your educational path or your future could have been different, right? But you had some adults in your life that predicted a different future for you. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, in the secondary school in France, either you go to the traditional high school path, which is the baccalaureate, so all is, the bright path, or if you don't have the skills, or the teacher do not see the skills in you, maybe you get to go to more technical path or technical school, which I did because I don't think I was anyway very pleased in class at the time. So I did a pure hazard. There was a beautiful brand new hotel school opening like few miles from where I lived and say, well, why not? Nobody's in the hotel business. Nobody's in the restaurant business. So I started that for a 2-year short-term program. And I did that. It was incredible. I got passionate. I loved it. It was more food and beverage and cooking. And I don't know, it was what I needed at the time. And then I kept on my educational path, going to a high school in technical school of hotel and restaurant business. And then did a degree in the same area to do a master's in hotel administration. So, and getting back to, what this teacher would have called, it's a nice path.
So there were some low expectations, it sounds like, when you were in your secondary school, and
Yeah.
but you basically showed them. You went the back way, it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't think there's a back way. I think it's a way.
It's a way. You're right.
And,
Yeah.
it's everything's possible. You just have to, try it and find, more importantly, is find what you like, where you feel good, and where you can be your best, and then you grow. If you do something you don't like, how do you expect to be good?
That's true.
You can force yourself, but you will be still not as good as if you follow what you like.
100%. That's why, that's one of the reasons time to come alive is so important to me, is because that's where people really find their aliveness, right? When they've connected to something that they enjoy, something that brings them energy, brings them a sense of fulfillment. Well, you mentioned earlier that your mind decides your body, right? That's what you said earlier. Or you said something like, yeah, the body is a result of the mind. I think that's what you said. So talk to us about, why do you feed your mind? First of all, to go against convention, right? The tradition in your education, to push against a disease that some, many don't survive, and to also accomplish some of the things that you've shared with us that you've accomplished. So how do you feed and nurture your mind?
Well, nothing particular. I don't know. I love reading. So I read not enough, and unfortunately, but when I was doing my 2-year technical program, I was not following the A path. So all the classic French writer from the 16th, the 18th century were not in the program, but I had a chance to have, my sister was on the bright path, and she was very bright in everything. And so I was trying to get, books. We've always had books in the family. So I had in the library everything that I wanted to read, and my mom was very pleased. I started reading because she was desperate. At my very early age, I was not interested. I was like, I don't want to read. And I've always read. I mean, I don't recall when I've not slept without reading 1 or 2 pages. And I follow. Once one person said, reading is a very efficient way to meet intelligent people.
That's good.
So now it's like, I don't know, I'm reading history. I'm reading, I've just bought a book about, the Indian and first Americans in the West conquest, to try to understand, that history in the United States. And I'm interested about, the way, the original culture has been somehow met by the West. How do you say conquest? You say, well, the West.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. It was a conquest, yes.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Invasion. Depends which side you see it, right?
Depends on the side who's telling the story. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, so reading has always been obviously been one of those things that you do now regularly. How do you know what's a good book? Like, what's a book worth reading a couple pages
Well,
of every
I
night?
have my little trick, which is worth only for me because I don't know it has any scientific relevance, but usually I say if at the 100th page I'm not in the book, I stop. So why 100? I don't know. It's, there's no reason for that. I think it's like a round number. But usually,
Well, I
that's what.
have. I talked about this book a lot. Have you heard of this book before, Life Safari?
No, no, I did not.
John Strzelecki.
But if it
So
has 95 pages, you have to finish.
it doesn't have 95, but it's like 125. So
Ooh.
if you don't get into it after the 100th page, I'm sorry. You've read pretty much
But
98% of.
there are a few books I stopped, very few.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually no.
Okay. So if you're not into it after 100, it's done. It's
Yeah,
over.
there's so many
Okay.
books anyway, so
Yeah,
you
there's a
know,
lot to choose from.
exactly.
What are you reading now? What were the last 2 pages you read in the last evening?
I'm finishing a book called, in French, it's Les Rois Maudits de Druon. It's a historical novel of the the French kings in the 14th century. And it's all the, how do you say maudits, les rois maudits? I'm not sure in English how you say
Not
the
sure.
cursed kings, I think.
Okay.
And it's the story, it's a historical with a bit of story to make it more interesting maybe, but I love it. It's the second time I read it. And
Ah,
it's a 1500 page book. So it's
1500. What page number are you on now?
nearly at the end now. So
Oh,
I
wow.
passed the 100.
So obviously more than once. So you
Yeah,
must have
exactly.
passed it.
Yeah, it's very rare the books I read twice.
Yeah.
So there's this one. There's the Count of Monte Cristo, which
Okay.
is a fabulous story, and it's the Lord of the Ring of Tolkien.
Okay. These
So
are
it's
all books that you've read more than once.
twice.
Just twice. Does any book get the
Because
third?
not yet, but they're all like very big books of
Okay.
1500 plus pages. So, but yeah,
That's a
it's
big achievement. We're
it's
proud of you, Thierry, for doing
thank
that.
you, thank you.
um, Going back to this idea that your body is a result of your mind, one of the things that you also mentioned is that you became plant-based recently. So talk to
Yeah.
us about what happened that helped you make that decision.
Well, maybe I spent too much time in Brazil eating cows in churrascaria. I don't know. It's a joke. Although I ate a lot of meat there. So, I train for marathons, and when I was in Mexico, I started doing mountain running, ultra running. So it's like running more than 42 kilometers or more than a marathon, 26 miles. And well, I got passionate by that and trying to push my body and mind also because it's also a very important factor. And I, I was also trying to get information, on what to do, how to train, how to eat. It's like a new world. So I love getting my body prepared and adjusted and aligned so that when I do a competition, I've been prepared as much as I could at the moment. And I read a book called, oh gosh, from Scott Jurek, Eat and Run, which is a legend in ultra running. He's he doesn't run anymore, but at least in competition, but he's been on the top of the podium for over 10 years. And he's always been a plant-based athlete, as we say, or vegan. And reading the book, I got like, wow, see if if it works for him, should be working for me. So that was my start. So I started to change my diet. I mean, I was eating very healthy anyway because I've always been running and doing marathons and half marathons. So and then I said, okay, I'll try because maybe I can get better at what I'm doing. and I started. I think it was early 16, no 17, and well, I felt a lot of energy. And what's really changed in my running was the recuperation from training and races, where usually, after a race, a marathon, you're like, oh, you cannot run for 3 weeks, and it's hard. After 100K, I could run the next week, no
Really?
problem. Even the day
When you got to
after.
plant-based.
Yeah,
Wow.
because you have less toxins in your body. You have, I mean, the benefits of plants and the non-benefits of meat. So when you change from one to the other, your body is like feeling it. So it was very, very striking, and so striking that I'm still following the diet. And it's a journey, and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of misunderstanding. Where do you get your protein from? Yeah, well, that's plants. Plants gets a lot of protein. There's a lot of documentary now talking about that, but there's still a lot of incredibility about it. And I think it's even more interesting for an athlete, being plant-based, because it's even more challenging, but even more important, as you need to feed your body better so that you
Yeah.
maintain or you develop your performance. So that's an interesting part of the experience as of
You made
now.
it, Thierry, you made a distinction between being plant-based and vegan. What's the distinction for you?
My elegant way to say I'm thinking.
Ah, very elegant.
I mean, I think vegan sometimes has a bit of a negative connotation, and because some vegan are a bit extremist, maybe in their way they see things. They fight and they don't tolerate, people not having the same diet. And reversely, some non-plant meat diet, like regular people, I would say, they would see vegan as activist and intolerant. So in order to avoid, starting on the wrong food, I would rather say plant-based diet. And people are more intrigued, say, what is it? It's vegan. Yes, but not necessarily as you understand vegan. So I'm still okay. My son one of my son turned vegan like 6 months ago now, but his own choice. And the other one is still enjoying eating meat in front of me and making like big smiles. I say, okay, fine. What I'm telling him is like, I've eaten more cows that you have in your whole life, son. So don't worry. I have more. I have more than you've eaten.
He still has to catch up. So hang on a second. So you
Exactly.
said one of your sons is vegan, so not plant-based.
Well, it's
This
plant-based.
isn't the
Sorry.
Guillot. Okay, all right. I'm like, is the Guillot definition carry across generations?
Yeah, well, sometimes.
Okay. And then the other one just wants to tease you with it. So
Exactly.
interesting.
Exactly. So yeah.
You
So,
what is your relationship to animals now? Has that shifted at all in the last few years?
I have a dog. Now, it's interesting because uh, I think the mind and the body, after sometimes, is, I don't know, your perception on the living, maybe more acute, more sensitive. And I could not necessarily explain, but you're not eating a living thing.
Hmm.
Well, living, I would say plant lives, but I'm saying, at least what we are
Like a
understanding
sentient being.
as an animal. And I don't know, it's again hard to explain, but your feeling and perception on animal suffering and the way we treat animals for feeding is getting more acute and more sensitive. And I think it comes as you've given up, eating animals.
Yeah.
So I'm not like saying we should all eat peas and beans, but I don't know, you have a perception, and I was interesting by that, and I listened to podcasts with activists for the well-being of animals, and it's an interesting also journey and an interesting chapter, and it was interesting. One of these very famous activists in the US was traditionally very activist type, that is against. And through years of activism this way, she saw that she was not getting efficient up to a moment of trying to reverse and challenge the paradigm in working with the big meat companies, not against, but working with, and trying to put with them on the table, the subject, the matter of the well-being of animals, even if they go to the slaughterhouse. So how can you make the animals less suffering, even though they're made for the food chain? So that's an interesting way of challenging the paradigm and trying to help, because interestingly enough, the people working in the meat factory are not necessarily very happy. And there's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of higher productivity to be sought and higher suffering. So there's a lot of elements of improvements. Not to mention, you eat the toxin you produce. So animals are feeling. They have feelings different from humans, obviously, but it's like, are you sure that the toxin they develop the moment they get slaughtered is positive and good for your body? And did you know that 90% of the antibiotic in the US, 90% are made for meat production, without having consequences on the human health and resistance of the body to antibiotic. But that's another diversion. So when you get close to the subject, it's very interesting. And then you have so many documentaries against and favor, like always. But at least you make up your mind. But at least no one can not tell you not to be a plant-based diet. So that's an experience you can do. If you don't like it, you don't do it. But that's again, it's an experience.
Although I feel like that last portion showed a bit of the transformation perhaps into veganism. I don't know,
No,
maybe. No, not quite.
I think tolerance and positive impact is more my thing.
Absolutely. No, my goddaughter is vegan and she did weightlifting for a long time. So I get the progression quite a bit. And I remember years and years ago, I lived with a host family in Germany who owned a Schlaterei. So they actually would produce, and they would have it it was right next to the house. The butcher shop was right next to the house. And so I remember we would have really beautiful spreads every day of all sorts of sausages and different types of meat. And I got the tour of the butcher shop as well. And I did ask to be let in on when they are actually going to slaughter the animal. Again, it was just a sense of curiosity about this life. And but at the end I was like, no, I prefer the mystery. I couldn't. But it's interesting, I think, what you said about your evolution as you've now started to, 2017 to now, look at how your choices have been defined by not only the foods that you've eaten, but the education that you've received, your sensitivity to the product, to the process. Fascinating. I want to pivot a little bit because, you've already painted the clear picture of how driven and high energy you are and the people around you are. In hospitality, we know that in the hotels, there's also a lot of energy for the most part throughout the day. You have now shifted over the last few months into work that doesn't require the same level of output. So how are you managing all this energy? And who's suffering as a result?
My keyboard. Yeah, well, it's interesting, especially now that we stopped traveling. I mean, the job requires traveling, so
Mm-hmm.
which is good and also tiring, at least for the body. But so now, yeah, it's. I mean, we all go through Zoom as you've done your past week with your
Mm-hmm.
students. So it's interesting, but it's a tiring exercise, and we don't realize because we don't think it should be. But for the mind, staying focused and in front of the eye of a camera is an exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So now, I mean, it's like the way it is. So my personality makes me adapt, saying this is what it is now, so make the best out of it, and it will change, and you will get back to maybe meet more teams, owners, guests, and people, overall, which is part of the job, which is making the thing also very interesting. But for now, it's what it is. So how can you do the best out of it? Rather than saying, say, well, what can I learn? What can I do? How can I still be in touch with our people? So this is what we're trying to do and achieve, and it's different, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think you mentioned that you also have things that you need to do in your life in order to be at your best, right?
Yeah,
So if the purpose of Hyatt is caring for people so that they can be their best, you also have a responsibility to care for yourself. So what are some things that, aside from this mindset that you have that's the ever optimistic and positive, what are some practical things that you've started to do to manage your energy, to manage your focus, to manage this shift until you're able to travel once again and meet people in person?
exercising, big
But you've
thing.
always done that.
Yeah, but more now, I would say.
More.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think it's even more important as we are in the current environment. Even more important if you travel, so that you keep, your body active.
Mm.
And then it's one thing I'm trying always. It's a bit of a focus for me is how I use my energy.
What do you mean?
So don't spend time and energy in things you cannot change.
For example, Thierry, what are you doing? Give us the.
Well, the example is like, I wish the pandemic would end tomorrow. It will not. So don't think about it. Don't spend a second thinking about it.
Mm.
I would like to get to travel and meet my colleagues at the hotel. Well, tough luck. It's not happening. So don't think about it. So I
Okay.
think this helps me. And I don't. Maybe sometimes I'm maybe too rational on that because I have a high sense of where I spend my time and energy,
Yeah.
and where it makes more impact, where it matters more for me or for my family, for my colleagues. And this is always like, how you say, a constant focus I have.
Mm.
It's, and I don't know, maybe now it's a second nature, so maybe I'm not aware, but it's like if something I'm doing is not bringing the value I see for now, for tomorrow, whatever, I don't necessarily do it because I have other things that maybe are more relevant to the moment.
Got that.
So it's this balance.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I don't know. I think it's so important because we can spend so much time doing nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's frustrating. It's
Mm-hmm.
frustrating because when you spend a day, and at the end of the day you don't know what you've achieved, you feel bad.
Mm.
It's not necessarily that you're bad or you've done a bad day, but it gives you this wrong perception of yourself of not having achieved anything. And it happens to me also. So I'm not like the superhero, no? But I'm trying to fight against that, being conscious. So, what can I do today so that I'm doing things that bring value,
Mm.
uh, and what do I do today that is making a bit of a change in whatever, being my own life, being life of others, and so on. And I'm always worried about, what is I'm going to leave behind if tomorrow ends.
Mm.
Ooh.
Well, I think that's a
Well,
great, that's a wonderful question to ponder.
yeah.
And maybe even as we start to wrap up here, what is it that you want to leave behind? Like, what would you like your sons to say about you, your family, the colleagues, the people that you led or lead? What would you like for them to?
Oh my God. I don't know. I've never thought about this very specifically centered on myself because I think myself is not necessarily the most important. But what you can do as whatever a leader, as a father, as a husband, so not necessarily self-centered, but centered to the other,
Mm.
is what counts. You know. So how much do you say I love you to your wife? How much do you say I love you to my son? If you don't think about it,
Mm.
you know, you won't do it because you think you're eternal, but maybe not. So how can you make the present more present? And how can you make the present impacting the future? And I always say, past is past. What do you want to do with this? We can look at the past. It's important to learn, but not to be looking at it with procrastinating, what you're going to do today.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's maybe the thing I'm very and constantly thinking. Most likely being unaware of that, but maybe that's what reflecting my drive, or what's called the drive.
What's called the drive? No, but I can really appreciate that, making the present more present, making your future more present. So really not about so much living for tomorrow or, oh, I have plenty of time, but
Yeah,
what can you
no.
bring to
I
light?
think when you go through a cancer, you don't have time. And I think everybody that survived cancer is like, no, it's my new life.
Wow.
What tomorrow I may die, because you are becoming conscious of your own death,
Mm.
which you're starting to be when maybe you're 60 or 70 now. But if you don't get to the cliff of, wow, what I have today is something maybe tomorrow I'm not awake.
Mm.
So it makes you also, I think it helped me in being more conscious of that, of what you do, what you impact, what you achieved, how you look at people. And it gives you, that's why I call that a great experience, because I think it helped me to get that feeling and perspective on things.
Mm. Wow. Well, we're grateful that you're still here. You're still here to teach and motivate and inspire people through your example as well as through your words. And know that some people will not be ready for it.
I know. I have to be conscious of that, because I can be very tiring.
I
I
can
know.
imagine. I can imagine.
But what I always try to have, and it's to allow people to talk
Mm.
and to give me feedback. And I think it's one of the fear, when you move up the layers of an organization, your title surpasses what you want to be or who you want to be, because people put boxes in the title. And that's a big fear for me. It's like, people won't necessarily talk to me, and I have to stimulate, I have to help people to go and tell me things. But sometimes the title is too big for people to reach to you, and talk to you and give you a real feedback, and not what they think you would like to hear, which is and you can only progress if you hear constructive feedback and the truth.
Yeah.
If not, it's like it's what my dear wife always says, don't worry, I always tell the truth to you. Say, ooh. So at the moment you're like, don't like to hear that, but in the end, it's part of
Yeah.
a journey of progression.
A journey of progression. And I can just imagine too, when people have or perceive consequence as a result of telling the truth, right? In the workplace is
Yeah.
slightly different than in marriage or in a family, right? You
Mm.
basically you choose your family and you belong to them. But I think
Yeah.
in the workplace, there might be a little bit more uncertainty about what the consequences of being truthful. But you all heard it here now. Thierry said he's open to it. Let him know.
Oh God.
Not in my comments, please.
What am I going to grow?
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. No, but Thierry, like I said, I so have appreciated over the years our connection, our ability to have some interesting conversations. You have always been quite open with me too. And although we don't work together anymore, I really do appreciate you being so generous with your time and energy today. Although we haven't exerted much of your energy, at least not physically. But I am grateful for your upbeat, your positivity, your commitment to people and service. So thank you for bringing that every time.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you very much. But don't go
Thank you.
anywhere because I know you're driven already to the next thing. Let me just wrap this up.
All right. I was like,
I know you're ready to hit end. So for those of you who've been tuning in, thank you so much for joining us today. Remember to go ahead and subscribe below on YouTube, or you can go to www.timetocomealive.com to subscribe. And that way you get an inbox message as soon as a new episode is published. Thank you so much, Thierry, for being with us today. And
my pleasure.
else, have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.